Good morning, learners. My name is Alhassan Kabor. I'm a software engineer at Ghana Communication Technology University. Today, we are going to start our journey on C++ programming language. Today is week 1. We are going to explore C++ from week 1 to week 12. So today, we are going to look at the introductory part of C++ programming language. Our next week or the following week, we are going to explore more on the data types. So without waste more time, let's begin our journey today by introducing C++ to you. So, looking at the C++ programming language, it was first created by Bejan Slop in the year 1979, and it was originated from C with classes. Firstly, from 1960 going, it was C with classes, not C++. So C++ was originated or is derived from what? C with classes. So Bejan Slop derived C++ from Dennis. Dennis is the one who created C, and then Bejan Slop also originated from it. So C++ is a subset of C with classes. It is a compiler language. C++ is a compiler language, and it is object-oriented programming language as well. We explore more about object-oriented concepts as we are going. And it was commercialized in the year 1985. C++ was commercialized in the year 1985, and standardized was approved by ANSI and IOC in the mid-1998. So why we use C++? Why we use C++? One, C++ is very, very efficient, and it is close to the hardware. Then, since it is close to the hardware, and then we can use it for system programming. Because the hardware, the machine code is binary, in a binary form. And then, as for the programming language, we have a lot of programming language, but C++ is closer to the machine language more than as other language does. So we use it for system programming. It enables modulars and reusable of what? Code. Here, when you talk about modular, a modular is like a complex instruction breaking down into what? Smaller unit or a manageable unit. Let's say we are giving us a project. We are building online admission system for various schools. Instead of us writing code for school 1, university 2, we can use the same code, but it functions for the whole schools. Maybe we have 5 schools or 6 schools. We can write just one code, but the code will function for the whole university. That's why we have something called classes and what? Functions. We will derive from other classes. We will learn more about it as we are going on. And it is portable across all platforms. As I'm using code blocks, someone on his or her PC can also use code blocks. Support for full object-oriented programming. As I explained earlier on, that we have something called classes, we have functions. So it's object-oriented concepts. As for C++, it's object-oriented what? Concepts. So as for the object-oriented concept, the OOP means object-oriented concept in C++. The core features or components we have to look at is object. When you say object in C++, we are talking about it combines data and other operation on the data into a single unit. So here, it combines data and other operations on the data into a single unit. In our practical session, you will understand what the objects we are talking about are. And then we have something called classes. Classes is a blueprint for creating objects. So as we said, the object combines data and operation on the data into a single unit. How can we able to combine data and other operations? So the classes is a blueprint for creating that object. So we have the key features in object-oriented programming. We have something called abstraction. The abstraction here is hiding the implementation details and what? Giving some important features to the users. And the encapsulation here, encapsulation means control access to the data before you can get access to the data unless you pass through a defined process. Inheritance, when you say inheritance in our own English word, inheritance means what? To derive something from your parents or your distant heredity. We have something in science, we have something called heredity. But in programming, inheritance means to inherit, to extend it from the existing classes. Maybe let's say I have written a code at the top of my code blocks and I want to inherit that code. to get that, reuse that code again. That we call inheritance. Polymorphism. The polymorphism here means polymorphism is one interface or multiple behaviors. We are talking about the implementation of instructions. That's the polymorphism. Okay, looking at how C++ program works. First, before you can write a program, you have to get your editor. When we are talking about the editor, we are talking about Code Blocks, Visual Studio, Dev, we have CodePen, a lot of editors. But I prefer, when you are writing C++ programming language, I prefer to use Code Blocks. You have to get the editor which you will use it to write what? Your code. We have processes that handle #include. When you see any statement begin with #, it tells you that it's all preprocessor or directives. We are going to explain more about all these things. Just the beginning of our journey. We have compiler. You have to ensure that your editor, there's a compiler exists. So the compiler will translate your code into machine code. Because your code is in a high programming language, for the machine to understand your code, unless we get a compiler who will translate your machine into what? Your code into what? A machine code. And the compiler also check that your code obeys, does it obey the rules in C++ or it does not obey the syntax. So that's the work of the compiler. And we have something called the linker. The linker will link or combine your code and other programs provided by Software Development Kit and then loaded into what? What do you call it? It combines your code and other resources provided by Software Development Kit to execute your code. And we have something called the loader. The loader will load your executable program into the main memory for what? Execution. So the last part of the life cycle of the last cycle in order of what? Writing a program in C++ is what? Execution. Executing, whereby the code what? Run the program. You are going to run the program and you execute, and you will see that maybe you are accepting console input, enter your name, enter your index number, and all those things. So our last subtopic, we are going to look at the thread and process. When you say thread and process, a thread is an independent running instance of program. So a thread is a program loaded into the main memory along with all the necessary resources needed for the program. That's the process. So the definition, we can say a process is a program loaded into the main memory along with all the software development kit. All the software development along with all the resources needed for the program. So that's the software development kit is going to provide such all the necessary resources. And we have thread. A thread is a single unit of execution within a process. It means that the thread is a subset of what? Process. We have multiple thread. We have single thread. And even a thread can communicate to each other more than a process can. Yes. So as we are going on our practical session, we understand how thread and what process does, and classes and all those things. Now this is a brief introduction to our first week. That's week 1. In our following week, we are going to explore more on it. Thank you for watching me. Goodbye.